right, here we go. Welcome to this edition of the Showcasing College Baseball podcast, powered by College Recruit Prep. I'm your host, Ross Hawley, and I want to thank you for spending some time with us, wherever you might be watching or listening from. If this is your first time with us, welcome. Go give us a follow on our Facebook group page at Showcasing College Baseball, or visit us on the World Wide Web at collegerecruitprep.com. Man, I'm pumped for today's episode. I know, I'm always pumped, but today I am pumped to be talking to this human being. I've known this guy for quite a while now, and I can say this with supreme confidence. He's one of the best guys you will ever meet. Rare is it you find someone who just gets it on every level. Well, Jake Rogers is one of those guys, and I'm not the only one who knows that about him. Jake played his college ball at Tulane. He was drafted in the third round by the Houston Astros in 2016, and today he's one of 30 men to be a starting catcher in the big leagues. Mark my words, this dude will be playing baseball for at least another 10 years, and when he's done playing, he's going to be a manager at the major league level. I'm just putting it out there. From what it's like to be a big leaguer to his advice to young baseball players out there dreaming of greener fields, here's my conversation with Jake Rogers of the Detroit Tigers. Guys, welcome to the Showcase College Baseball podcast. My name is Ross Hawley with College Recruit Prep, and I'm excited today to talk to the man you're seeing on your screen. Well, if you're listening, you're not seeing him, but the man, Jake Rogers, catcher for the Detroit Tigers, the big league team. Jake's been in the big leagues, I believe, for 3 years now. Had just a breakout year last year. Let's hope he gets that money in arbitration because he deserves it. But Jake Rogers, welcome to the show, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me, man. It's a pleasure.
So Jake, you are just kind of curious what you got going on right now. It's a Friday afternoon in Florida. You're just out, you're in Lakeland or Tampa?
Yeah, working out at the facility in Lakeland, Florida, but living here in Tampa. I got nothing going on right now. I went in and did all the worked out, caught all the good baseball stuff this morning from 7:30 to I got back at about 1. So just kind of did that all this morning, and now just kind of hanging out, relaxing.
Awesome, man. Well, you know what? I'm gonna go through some questions because, man, I could pick your brain all day, and I think you're gonna have some really good stuff for our audience here. But I want to start with this, man. I'm gonna say this. I want to know this. Walk me through, like, we're in the off season right now. We know that pitchers, catchers report like in about February 15th-ish?
February 14th or 15th, yeah, somewhere around Valentine's Day.
Oh, wow. So
good way to miss out on Valentine's Day.
Get it all in before you head down there.
Exactly.
So man, Jake, what I want to know for everybody listening, walk me through a typical day during the off season for you. What do you do? You mentioned 7:30 workout. I'm like, dang, that's early, man. So walk me through a typical day.
Well, before I got here this week, but when I was in Dallas, I live in Dallas during the off season. Typical day would be wake up at 7:30, drive up to Frisco where I work out and get a good workout in from about 8:30 to about 11:30. And then from there, we'll go we'll throw outside or indoors, whatever's, if it's a nice day, we'll throw outside, whatever, get your throwing in. And then from there, we'll head to a facility where we hit, and then we hit for, however long that takes. If it's a good day, 30, 45 minutes. If it's a bad day, about an hour, 15, if you're trying to work on something.
Yeah.
Then from there, head home and kind of be lazy for the day, and then start cooking some dinner or whatever when dinner time comes around. That's about it, really. I mean, really from 7:30 to about right after lunch. It's kind of like my work time, and then after that, I kind of get to do with whatever I want. After that, whether it's little video games here and there or just kind of hanging out, man. That's about it.
You gotta let me know. You and I need to hook up on X. Do you have Xbox or PlayStation?
PlayStation, yeah, PS5. Yeah.
What are your games?
Man, I don't like during the season. If there's downtime, I don't really play much. But like golf, the PGA golf is like a huge time waster.
Yeah.
Because you could play like a full 18 holes and it takes like 45 minutes. So like it really does like take some time off. But like Call of Duty, I'm a big Call of Duty guy.
Yeah.
I've literally, I think I've bought, I started on, PS3 when I was in high school. I think I've bought literally every Call of Duty game because I love
nice.
I play online all the time, with my buddies. It's kind of a good time killer in the afternoons too. But I literally buy the game just for the campaign. I crush the campaign. That's like yeah.
See, that's the fun stuff. That's what everybody really wants to know about you.
I like this.
Hey, I'll tell you what. All right, so I'm curious. When you say we go work out in the off season, do you have some dudes that you're rolling with each day? Some other big leaguers, some minor leaguers? What does that look like?
Yeah, there's a few of us. When we're all together, guys have weddings, leaving on the weekends, kind of thing. When we're all together, there's 5 of us in this group. It's me, Max Muncy, who's a local guy out of Keller, and then Josh Bell, another local guy, and then Kyle Crick, who's been in the big leagues for a while with the Pirates. He's from up north in Sherman, the DFW area, and then a kid named Matt Lipka.
From McKinney.
Yeah, McKinney kid. So they're all kind of local DFW guys, and we had a couple college kids that came in towards the end of the year. And then that's kind of about it, though. It's kind of I like the smaller groups. You kind of have you have a good time, though. You need that like friendly competition, to kind of work out and mess around too, and that's kind of probably what takes us working out 3 hours is we're kind of we'll talk, and then we'll work out for a little bit, and then we'll talk, and in between sets, stuff like that. But yeah, that's kind of the crew right now.
What's the value of that knowledge base? I mean, I obviously Muncy's known for having the best eye in Major League Baseball, which to me just blows my mind. But what's it like being around those guys? Are you guys picking each other's brains? Are you tips? Are we giving suggestions? What's that look like?
We get into baseball talk we do talk baseball a lot. We're all baseball guys. But we it's very rare, like I would say most of the time we're just here, like kind of getting away. Everyone's kind of getting away from baseball. You play it for, all year, you get it, all year, pretty much until October, from February to October. And, so at that time, we're just kind of there to goof around and let the personalities come out and stay away from baseball. But it does come up a lot, because it's part of our lives. It's, like everyone's trying to get an edge on the game, and, just kind of see what they're thinking. And that's what I've always loved to do is like talk about that. And having, Months especially, he's an incredible eye, like you're saying. And then Josh Bell, who's been around forever. He's been on, a few organizations. He knows how it should be run. They're both great guys to have around. And, it's also, with Crick, it also lets me, he's a pitcher. He's a relief pitcher, so it lets me, kind of catch his bullpens and kind of stay a little, in shape with that in that regard. So it's you can't really put a price on it with talking to all those guys, because they all came up differently. Everyone came up differently, and their paths are all different. So everyone's got stories, and it's always fun to chop with those guys.
I kind of want to build this up because, like, obviously I know you, and I had the pleasure of just being around you for 2 years when we coached one of the teams that you played on when you were 16, 17, 18.
15, 16, 17, somewhere in
there. And man, the stories I could tell about you, we'll get into those. And nothing
good and bad.
No, and you know what? You'd be surprised. Not that many bad ones, man. So, but I kind of want you to build this up, because the audience listening, they see Jake Rogers as a big league catcher. You are the best of the best. You're one of, 32, starting big league catchers. That's not very many spots in the world. Mm-hmm. I want to know when did you realize that like baseball was your thing? And and when did you realize that, hey, I want to be doing this at the highest level that I can? And when you made that, was it like a conscious decision? And what did that work in that journey look like for you?
Man, baseball has always, like, ever since I can remember, like my earliest memories, I had a baseball in my hand. We grew up in a small town in West Texas. So I have two older brothers, one that's 9 years older. I was kind of a baby, so surprise. And, one that's 9 years older, one that's 13 years older. And they were in high school at the time when I was kind of getting in the 4 or 5 year old range, and they played all the sports. So sports was just like a part of my DNA. It always was. My dad kind of grew up a farmer, but they grew up, again, small town West Texas. His dad, but they always talk about his dad being incredible at baseball. My mom's dad being incredible at baseball. So it kind of runs deep. But ever since I was little, man, growing up, I grew up around baseball fields. I grew up around football fields. I grew up on the basketball court, running and watching sports. But the one that I was just, honestly, naturally good at was baseball. And that's the one that I always loved. I mean, my first word was ball. I mean, that's kind of cliche, but, it's just kind of always been a part of me. And ever since I, was 4 or 5, I remember going to the field and I think this is what really kind of helped me excel was, my brother was, 14, a freshman in high school when I was 5, so
yeah,
I was going up to the high school field and, catching fly balls from high schoolers and playing catch with high schoolers, so like, I think that really kind of propelled me, and playing with kids that are older than me, and really kind of, pushing the limits, of guys like kind of, not even trying to make me better, but just naturally doing it because, they're just playing how they're going to play. But
was there a time when you said, when you realized like, this is a little bit different for me. I'm a little bit better, I think, than some of the other guys. Was there a moment like that for you?
Man, I don't really have, like, it took me a while to figure that out. I always knew I was pretty good, but I just loved playing the game. It really didn't that didn't really hit me until I was probably, in high school, and colleges started talking to me. Like it really didn't hit me that, and I'm like, man, like these teams actually want me to play for them in college. Like it didn't hit me. Like I always hear it from my family, but it's not the same. You hear it from your dad and your brother, and it's like, oh, you're the best catcher ever. Like they have to say that. They have to say that. They're not gonna. So I took what they had with a grain of salt, and but just playing against guys and having coaches, kind of telling me like you could, make that move to the next step. And what was wild, and I don't even really know why. I might be jumping ahead of questions, but
no, man, have at
it. What's wild is when it became time to, because I fast forwarding, I got a chance to a free agent sign from the Tampa Bay Rays out of high school. And I had to choose between, college or pro. My dad always told me like one of my dreams was to play college baseball. Yeah. And like, I always told like, man, you wanted to play college ball. You wanted to play college ball because there wasn't really any pro teams out in West Texas. There was when I was really little, but I don't even know if they're around there. They were called the Crickets. And I think it was a farm league team for a certain team. And I couldn't even tell you what team, the Lubbock Crickets, but there was the Amarillo Dillas was a minor league team. But I mean, really, other than that, it was Texas Tech. It was Texas Tech baseball. Yeah. Those are the games we went to. And I think that's kind of what kind of pushed.
Did those, please tell me that Texas Tech recruited you?
Crazy story, but yeah. Yes and no. Yes, that's a long story. But yes and no. So when they had a coaching change to Tadlock when I was a junior or a sophomore. It was sophomore, junior, right around the time of recruiting. And Dan Spencer was the coach at the time. And he was recruiting me pretty heavy. And then he ended up going to University of New Mexico. I think it was my sophomore year because that was my first offer was Dan Spencer at University of New Mexico.
Wow.
And And when he left, he offered me there. And I was, because like literally Texas Tech could have offered me like little to no money and I would have went like it.
Man,
but
I'm shocked that you didn't go there. I didn't even think about that.
I would have, and that's what's kind of crazy. And they didn't know that. I mean, it was, I've heard nothing but great things about Tim Tadlock, honestly. But I mean, they just kind of, it didn't happen. Crazy story.
Well, so you ended up at Tulane. You know what? Here, let me back up a step.
Yeah.
I want to go in on that story about the Tampa Bay Rays, because here's what I remember of that. I remember, you may not have like a moment, but for me watching you, and I like I said, I had the joy of watching you for 2 years as a pitching coach on the staff that coached the DBAT team that you played on, and there was the moment that I remember leaving the park and saying, I think this dude is different than everybody else on the field, was the triple that you hit. Was it a 2-strike count? We were playing Midland and we were down to your last strike, down to the last 2 outs. Do you remember this moment?
I don't. Is this Connie Mack?
Connie Mack World Series. Yeah. We're in the Connie Mack World Series, and we're playing Midland, and we're thinking it was an elimination game, and to get to the finals, I believe. And you were 1-2, 2-2. But I remember watching in the moment how slow everything seemed to you, and being with my background, I'm like, I've seen good players before, but how slow things were going for you. And then to come clutch, and you just hit an absolute missile over the center fielder's head, scored runs. You end up on third, and then I hear in the hotel after the game that Tampa Bay was on you, basically offering you a nice amount of money. Right. Yeah. And I remember thinking, this dude's different. This dude, he has what it takes. So that was kind of my moment. What do you remember of that moment? When they made that offer to you.
Yeah. So, I didn't have an agent in high school. I was a good player, but I was recruited here and there. I wasn't like heavily recruited, but I was recruited pretty good. But it's so hard, and this is what's wild. And they've kind of gone away with scouting and stuff like that. But being over in West Texas, being in that Lubbock, Amarillo area, it's really hard to get scouted, especially for professional scouts. Yeah. Because it's so far from everything. Because back in the day, and I don't even know how it is now, I think they kind of all rely on, analytics and stuff like that. But they would have 2 scouts in Texas. Like each team would have 2 scouts in Texas. One, the Rangers, for example, or the Tigers would have, 2 Texas scouts, one for North Texas, one for South Texas. And they would be in charge for pretty much. North Texas would be Oklahoma too, and South Texas would be Louisiana. So that's a lot of area to cover. That's a lot of talent, and most of the talent, 99.9% of the talent that's in North Texas is in the DFW area. Yep. Or within an hour, and yep. Then 99.9% of the talent in South Texas is in Houston. Yep. So they just, unless they had an incredible reason to venture outside of it, especially to go 6 hours from Dallas to Amarillo or, in Canyon where I went to school, it was very difficult to get scouts to go to those games. And so I didn't really have many eyes on me. There was two teams in particular that really were heavy on me. One was the Minnesota Twins, and I cannot remember that guy's name. And I should, but the Minnesota Twins and the Tampa Bay Rays, Pat Murphy, and I'll always remember his name. But Pat Murphy with the Tampa Bay Rays, I don't think he's scouting anymore. I think he retired, but after that game in the Connie Mack, I went to the car, and he had called me, and he's like, "Hey man, I just want to let you know that, Tampa, we have some money left over, and we wanted to offer it to you." And I was like, "Oh man, I didn't even think in a million years I'd be able to play professionally."
Wow.
And I just I remember I was in someone's car. I think I was in the back of the host family's car, because I have when I get on the phone, I was always taught to like really talk clearly and loud. So I talk loud when I'm on the phone.
Yeah.
And so like I always try to get away from people and I pace but I was like, man, I'll just go in the car so that no one hears me or whatever. So I called him back and he was like, man, we want to offer you, and it was $350,000.
Woo!
And we weren't by any means lower class. We were lower middle class. My parents were hard workers, and we had 3 boys, so we didn't struggle. They made me feel comfortable, but that was a lot of money, and
Heck
I was
yeah,
like,
man.
life-changing money. I was like, man, I'd never heard of this money in my life. I didn't even know there was 100,000 even allowed to be behind money. And it shook me, man. I didn't know what to do. I didn't have an agent. All I had was, you guys and, my brothers who I rely heavy on, and my family. And so I called all of them, and they're excited, and I'm talking to them pretty much all day. And, there's one of the host families there, had a big party, and all the guys got together. And I think all of us, it was kind of like a big thing we had that night. But I was kind of, going outside a lot just to talk on the phone because I didn't know what to do. It was like probably the second hardest, probably the hardest decision of my life. After college, is picking a college. But yeah, it was so hard, and because it was so much money, and that was like, it was the last thing the thing that really made me decide if I was going to go to school or to go to pro ball was my dad. I called my dad, and I'm like, man, and he's like, you could tell he's like kind of heart dropped, and he's like, man, that is hard, but you told me ever since you were a little kid you can't wait to play college baseball.
Wow.
And he was like, man, and this is your decision. I ain't telling you to do whatever you want to. You got to do whatever you want to do. We're going to support you no matter what. But that was kind of the final straw where I called Tulane, and I told them about it too. Jake Gautreaux is now at Mississippi State.
Gautreaux's like, dang it.
Yeah, Goat. Yeah, I called Goat. I called Goat, and this was before I kind of talked to my dad. I called Tulane. I was like, Goat, I have no idea what to do. Like, is that a lot of money? Is that enough money for a high school catcher to take it and go into pro ball and I had no idea about the lower levels. I had no idea. I knew that it was professional baseball, and that was one of my dreams. So he was like, Jake, I mean, it is, but give me a sec. And he hangs up, he calls me back, and he goes, what if I give you 10% more to come to school? And I was like, oh, now, that's awesome. I think they moved around, and I honestly think they had one of the players kind of that was going. I don't really know who that is, but they moved around the money, and I called a player, I think, and asked if it was all right if they gave, took 10% and gave it to me. And wow. And that was another big inclination. And I just those were kind of 2 big signs. And I was driving down the road. Like if I was driving down the road, I took the signs and just went with it.
Wow.
But that was
so from that moment, you picked, and that's kind of what I want to get into next is, from that moment you made that commitment and said, hey, I'm all in at Tulane. So, I want to keep this. I want, because man, you're such a knowledgeable guy, and you have so much good information in your brain for our audience. I want to gear it towards like the recruiting process. And I want to go to say, all right, you made that commitment, like that recommitment to Tulane. Did that moment of getting the offer from the Tampa Bay Rays, did that like fuel you on like another level? And talk to me about, hey, the commitment to Tulane, and tell me a little bit about just the recruiting process in general.
I got another long story about that. Yeah. So recruiting process was really an exciting time for me. It was for my family. It's really a cool time, especially in the position I was in, to get more than one offer, and be able to go play Division I baseball. I don't take that for granted for a second, but it was a really stressful time because I didn't, as a 17, 18-year-old kid, I didn't know what I should do, and my family was big on, this is yours, And I surprised my mom with Tulane too. I don't think she was expecting it, but that was the big thing. It was like, man, this is all yours. You know, we'll go with you. We'll give you everything you need. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to make this decision. I'm not even going to tell you should even halfway go to this school or that school. But yeah, I mean, it was a long process. I mean, me and my brother, my middle brother, Joe was a big help in all of this. And this whole process we kind of sat down and I mean, emailed, I bet 75% of Division I schools when I was like a sophomore, and emailed everybody just to get my name out. We started going to these perfect game showcases.
Yeah.
When I was little, just to get in front of eyes. Cause like I said, you know, that was the main reason why I came and played for DBAT was at the time we had no summer league baseball team, in West Texas, in Amarillo. And my brother like got online and was like, you know, competitive summer league baseball. And I guess DBAT showed up and that was, you know, that's a whole nother story. But I got into DBAT and just to get in front of college ice, you know, because going to DFW, we kind of knew that those guys weren't going to come out to Canyon all that much. And so I went and started, and I got in that organization and thankful for that organization too, and kind of built my way up into a great team and, you know, played with a lot of great guys and, you know, all those guys going to all those, you know, great schools, you know, it got me in front of a lot of eyes. But yeah, I started, like I said earlier, my first ever, because I went to every Texas Tech camp from when I was 10 years old to high school. Like 10 to 14, 15, I went to every single catching camp at the Texas Tech.
I'm straight up pissed camp at Texas Tech right now.
Yeah. I went to every single camp. I knew a lot of those coaches. I mean, even some of the coaches I even played in there was like a coach that played high school that was a catching coach there that coached at Plainview. I mean, there was just a lot of people I knew just from going to those every year. You know, here's this Rogers kid again, probably, you know, and you know, and that was a big thing. And when Spencer left, and they hired Tadlock on, Spencer went to University of New Mexico. That was my first offer. And I had no idea about the offer size and how it should be and how, you know, what was a good offer for, you know, because, you know, with 11.7, I didn't know what a good offer was for a hitter or what a good offer was for a catcher, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
They offered me 75%,
Ooh.
Which was a big offer. At the time, I didn't know how big it was, but I knew it was substantial. And I went with, I think me and my mom went to this one. I went to Albuquerque and I went on a visit. They showed me around, you know, took me to dinner, you know, the whole visit thing, and sat me down and they offered me that amount of money. I went home and like 2 days later, they were like, do you have a decision? And I was like, oh, I didn't know I had a time. And they're like, yeah, you have a week. Call me back in a week. And I said, and I was kind of like dumbfounded. I was like, well, I'm not putting the time to it. Go ahead, pass on me. You know, I'm good.
Wow. Yeah.
And like the time kind of threw me off New Mexico. I was like, I mean, they could have been, you know, the only one, but I was like, you know, whatever. It is
Jake, what year in high school was that when they made you that offer?
Oh man, I was a sophomore at that point. Okay. I was a sophomore. Yeah. That was, you know, 2011, wow. I believe.
Okay. Yep.
So that whole thing happened. And then after that, you know, the end of my sophomore year is when I started to get more and more offers to different schools. And that was when they started emailing back, wanting my ACT scores, blah, 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 that whole thing. For some reason, well, I know the reason why, but I always wanted to go to Cal State Fullerton.
Yeah.
And I wanted to go to the West Coast. Cal State Fullerton and Stanford, and it was because there was a baseball game on, I think it was PlayStation 1, might have been 2, but I think it was 2. It was NCAA baseball.
Yes.
NCAA baseball, and I always played with Cal State Fullerton because they were always up there, yes. You know, number 1 through 5 or whatever. I always played with Tulane too because Tulane was, I think, top 5 at that time.
Yep.
But anyway, that's the big reason why. So I emailed all those schools and had some luck, you know, with emails back and, you know, hey, here's your ACT scores. And they didn't email me back after that. So I had to take the ACT a few times just to get the number up. But but anyway, yeah. And then, the kind of the main three that came on was TCU, Oklahoma, and Tulane were kind of the final. I never really wanted to go to Texas A&M. I didn't want to go to the big schools, Texas. But TCU was big on my list. Oklahoma they came pretty hard. TCU they had offered me a scholarship, but depending on a player. And this is a whole nother story. I'll get into it, but so I'm talking my head off right now. So please
go, baby, go. It's a podcast.
So I got it. I got an offer from TCU, and it was like, hey, look, we have a percentage for you, but right now it's out to a kid, an incredible player, Billy McKinney.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And he was like, if he commits, because he was a huge prospect. He was a first rounder out of high school.
First rounder to the A's, yeah.
And he had, I'm sure he had offers to everybody, but TCU, Oklahoma were kind of those two. And then he ended up committing to TCU. And so Vitello was like, man, we don't have any more money for, position players. He took up a lot. And we're like, I was like, I get it. He was like, you want to be preferred to walk on? And I was like, man, I'm sorry. I can't afford it. I wish I could, TCU was probably number one out of all those, but,
and Vitello was back the recruiting coordinator at TCU, who is now the head coach at Tennessee.
Yep. So Vitello was like, hey man, no hard feelings, whatever. And so after that, it was, at the time, Tulane wasn't even in question. It was just pretty much Oklahoma who had offered me 40% at the time. And which it was a good offer. It was a really good offer.
Absolutely.
And I had a lot of buddies that were going there on the team, with Top Octavio, Nico Buentello, Sheldon Noisy, all those guys that we played with.
Jake Rogers,
and Jake Elliott,
Yep.
So we had a lot of buddies on that team that were going there. 4 guys on the same team, which is kind of wild to think about. But so when TCU said, and I called him, I was like, look, man, like literally if you have any more money anywhere, like if it's even 5%, 10%, is there anywhere y'all have? He's like, man, let me call you back. There's nothing. And then he called me back, said, oh, I'm sorry that we don't have any more money. And I said, okay. About the same week or a week or so later, Billy had committed to TCU. And I was like, for sure, Oklahoma. So I found out Billy McKinney had an offer out to Oklahoma. And I called the recruiting coordinators at the time. And I was like, are you sure you don't have any more money anywhere? And they were like, we have no money whatsoever. And I said, okay, it looks like I'm not going to go here. And that was kind of my final decision between OU and Tulane was that. And I chose Tulane over them and in that regard. But when Tulane is a wild story of how it came on the map. So I played the first year. There was a couple years there. I don't even know if it's still going on. I doubt it, but it was called the Battle of the Borders tournament.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know, is it still going on or probably not?
I think it is.
But yeah, so they had this Battle of the Borders tournament. It was the first year it ever come up. I played for Team Texas with Cade Griffiths, and had a pretty good little, we had a good little tournament. I had a good little tournament, and the next year Cade was like, dude, 100%, you're going to be on the team next year. And I said, I would appreciate that more than anything. And this was my junior year, junior fall. So it was pretty late. Everyone at this time had probably already committed, not signed yet, but committed. And I was kind of one of the last ones that didn't really have a school. And right about a month before this Battle of the Borders tournament happened, I was texting Cade and asking him, he's like, oh, contact this guy. And I can't remember this guy, the coach's name, but and he ended up like, there was no spot for me. They had just like filled it.
No.
And which is fine. I mean, he might have forgot. I mean, people get busy. Like, I don't hold grudges against that at all. But my brother actually noticed that Team Louisiana only had one catcher on their roster. So Joe was like, dude, email that coach. You need to email him. Just email him, send an email, say, look, blah, blah, blah. And I sent him a pretty crazy email. And you have to ask that guy about the story, but I sent him an email pretty much saying, look, this thing happened to me with Team Texas. I want nothing more than to kick this guy's ass.
Yeah.
Please put me on the team and we'll win the tournament. I guarantee it. And he loved it. A guy named Chris Westcott. I owe a lot to him, obviously, because of the story, but Chris called me back and said, dude, hell yeah, come play for Louisiana. You can play for me any day. So I played for Team Louisiana. I ended up getting MVP of the tournament. And I don't think we won. I think Oklahoma. I can't remember who won, but I don't think we won. But I had a really good tournament. And Chris is, he's from Louisiana. I mean, they're loud and they're gonna let people know it through the whole. It's just they don't care. And Chris the whole time's yelling at me when I'm playing catching. He's like, "You can come live with me. Come live with me. We'll play against Kate all year." Next, just trying to recruit me. Well, after the tournament, he goes, "Man, do you have any interest in playing in Louisiana?" And I said, "Man, I would love nothing more." And I was like, "I'm open to anything." And he goes, "Here you go." And he hands me the phone, and it's Rick Jones, the head coach at Tulane.
Dang.
And I get on the phone. He goes, "Hey, Mr. Westcott has incredible things to say about you. How would you like to come play baseball at Tulane?"
Dang, man. That's
and
crazy.
I went, and I was like, "Man, I'd love it." He's like, "We'll come on a visit. We'll show you around. And we'll talk, more about your offer when you get here." And I said, "Awesome." I put down the phone. He gave me his contact information, and Gotro, who was the recruiting coordinator at the time, gave me a call the next day or later that day and was like, "Hey, we got you out next weekend. Come on." And I went. It was the only visit I went on by myself. And it was a quick one. I remember I flew in Saturday morning. I flew out of Dallas at like 6 a.m. and spent the whole day in New Orleans, and then flew out on Sunday at 6 a.m. So it was like a quick. It was really quick. It was a one-day thing, in and out. And I flew in, and I fell in love. I fell in love with New Orleans. I fell in love with the campus. It's a super cool campus. I mean, it's incredible school, but I mean, at the time I didn't know anything about that. I was just, curious, playing baseball, but I fell in love with like the tradition of it all, the old school campus, the old oak trees that are growing in the ground.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm an old soul, but I love all that. And ended up, they offered me 70% at Tulane.
Good.
And this was kind of, so I had 70% at Tulane and I had 30 or 40 at Oklahoma. And that was when the call happened. And I told Oklahoma I was going to go to Tulane. But that is pretty much the story of Chris Westcott, because they literally, sight unseen, had never seen me play a single inning of baseball and offered me that amount of money just off of that guy's, which speaks a lot, I think, to Chris.
Sure.
And how they trust him with that. But it's a kind of a wild story. But I mean, you just never really know. I mean, that was so last minute. And I think literally I committed, at the Connie Mack World Series, and then signed like all within 2 or 3 months.
Wow.
It was all last minute.
Let me, because man, let me transition into this, because like, listen, you're a big league catcher, man. You had multiple Division I offers. Obviously, not everyone is going to be that talented. You understand that, but something that you said to me that I didn't even know stood out is you sent emails. You hunted down Westcott. You were proactive with your journey, no matter what level that is. Take me into, as a 28-year-old man now who's been there, done that, with all these excellent experiences. When you look back at that and you say, what's the best advice you would have for like the high school players wanting to play at the collegiate level, wanting to play professional baseball? What comes to mind when I ask you what advice do you have for those kids?
I mean, just honestly, keep playing. I mean, you got to love it. That's the one thing I always tell kids, like, you have to love it. Baseball, it'll always find a way you'll hate it, but you have to love it. You have to love playing it. But the biggest advice, and I had, my brother who was super helpful throughout the whole process, pretty much making me do these things. But he, there's so many, if you want to play at the next level, you can play at the next level. There's plenty of opportunities. Like I said, I emailed pretty much every school ever. That was even
amazing to me.
And just tried to get anybody's attention, because you can go online and get anybody's email off the team website. You can get, University of Texas, the coaches that coached me at Tulane, or University of Texas, blow up Philip Miller, blow up Coach Pierce, David Pierce, because they get emails. That's what they're supposed to do, and if they can have a kid that they get an email from and they have a video of your talents or whatever and can see you online, it's an easier thing for them to weed out and go, you know what, we can go see this guy. And then they can go right up the road when you're playing whoever you're playing close to them and go see it. You can do that for Texas. You can do that for, Division II, West Texas A&M, that, in Canyon, Texas, that I grew up in. I mean, there's Division III, JUCO. I mean, there's so many kids even on this team right now, in Detroit that were JUCO guys. I mean, it's very possible. You just have to, if you want to play it and you really truly love it, you can find a place. And just be a go-getter, man. If you want to do it, go get it. If you're not, not fully into it, and you're talented enough for the talent, for all the schools to come at you. I mean, that's another thing, man. You're blessed. You're a part of a small percentage. But yeah, I mean, there's plenty of spots. You just got to want it and go get it.
Man, I love hearing you say that, because truly the opportunities, one of the most beautiful things about baseball is guys develop at different times. They mature, they click at different times, and you never know if you're that far or that far away from it all making sense. So I love that advice. I want you to talk to the audience about failure. And I want your thoughts on how important it is to embrace failure and to understand that's one of the biggest parts of the game. Talk to me about it.
I mean, it's the biggest part, and it's so cliche, but it's so true. I mean, you fail 7 out of 10 times, and especially nowadays, you're an incredible hitter, and always been an incredible hitter. Excuse me. But it's so important. And that was some advice my dad gave me a long time ago, was always have a small memory, small memory, whatever you call it. And that was one thing I always, my dad was super hard on me, he was, and I appreciate it out of him, but that was one thing, it was always, you mess up, it's like, who cares? There's going to be another ball come at you, or you swing and miss on 0-1, it's failure is a part of the game. And that's what makes this game so beautiful is you have to thoroughly love it and thoroughly enjoy it, because it is a game of failure. And knowing that all these guys that you're playing with thoroughly enjoy it and thoroughly love it, that's the beauty of the whole game, is because that each guy has had his own road and own path to get to exactly where it is, whether it's a buddy you played, like a buddy I played with in high A, that, he went to University of Georgia, made it all the way to AA, and now he has a successful career outside of baseball.
Wow.
It's not everybody's walk, man, but he gave it a try. He gave it the best he could, and sat down and had a talk with himself and went there. And it's such a beautiful game where that guy doesn't regret a single thing in his life, because he gave it a try and realized that the game of failure kind of got him. And it's a beautiful, beautiful game. But I and trust me, and you can look at the back of my baseball card, I have failed. And especially, coming up in 2019, I've been a part of it, and it was tough, man. It's so hard, because especially at the highest level, they figure you out, and they exploit your weaknesses, at the plate, and you chasing a slider away in the dirt, because I love sliders away in the dirt.
Who doesn't?
They'll throw it over and over again. And it makes you so much better as a person and a player to kind of go through that. But if you can just have that short memory, that small memory, and be able to flush it, because some of the best players I've ever played with are the guys that nothing bothers them. Nothing bothers them. They can strike out with the bases loaded in the bottom of the ninth, and they're mad for about 5 seconds because they know they let the team down. And then the next day they come to the yard and they're like, who's next? All right, we got Cole.
Dude, that is crazy that you say that, because I want to point this out, and I think you know this. You should know it. I think you're a pretty self-aware guy, but that's how I would describe you. I would describe you, because what I want the people that are listening to this know, that if you don't know who Jake Rogers is, you should know. The dude is an absolute stud. But as good as he is as a baseball player, Jake, you're one of the coolest, most laid back, approachable, who gives a writ, I'm just going to be good to people type guys. And does that just how your personality is that the reason why you've had this success at the highest levels? It's almost like just water off a duck's back, oh well if I do, oh well if I don't. Is that kind of how it is for you?
I mean, I'd like to think so. And it's a big piece of advice I always got growing up, was that small memory, and kind of even more so is like, you kind of grow up and guys that are rude, guys that aren't very nice, and you kind of meet guys along the way that are like, man, I wouldn't care if I ever talked to him again, type of guys. And it's always, behind being a great player, there's a lot of guys that really, they're great teammates, great people. And that's tip of the cap to my parents.
Heck yeah.
for raising me and raising me right, and just instilling to me, like, it's about, because you always have a chance if you're a good guy, like you go into an interview for anybody, whether it's baseball, whether it's insurance, you always have a chance if you're one of the most liked guys in the room, because people like being around you, people like talking to you, and that's kind of what I went through some, I got some stories where I wasn't a good guy with people I shouldn't have. And I learned pretty quick that that's not very, a good thing to do. And, it humbled me, man. It humbled me. It cost me some service time in the big leagues. And, and now I tell my nephew this all the time, man. It's like, you want to be the most liked guy in the room. That's the biggest thing. You want to be the most liked guy in the room, because it goes a long way, man. People love being around you. You exude like this, it's not necessarily like a confidence, but it's almost like a confidence, cocky thing where you don't really care what happens. You're just here to have fun. You're here to, play the game that you love and play it your whole life. And it's, I don't know if it does, but I hope it exudes and it helps people, in the dugout, go like, oh, Jake went 0 for 5 today and struck out 8 times. We won 1-0, he, what I'm saying? Like, you're
conscious of that mentality.
I know that it's not going to help me at all. Like in my head, in my mental approach and my mental stuff, I know it's not going to help me at all to blow up. And when I go 0 for 5, because I know, like, there's always the next day, there's always tomorrow, whether it's in the big leagues, whether it's in AAA, I know I get to play the game tomorrow. And I trust myself and my approach and all the coaches and what they've done in the pitcher, that I know I got this guy tomorrow, and that's kind of the big thing. It's a confidence. It's kind of a swagger, if you'd like to say that, but it's also at the same time, people, like I said earlier, man, like the best players I've ever played with, like, it's like almost like they don't care. It's like, it doesn't even matter to them. Like baseball doesn't even matter. They're just like,
who comes to mind when you're saying that? Yeah. Who comes to your mind? Some of the best.
The best player I've run through a lot, but the guy that I play with right now, that is just an incredible player, has incredible talent, and honestly doesn't even know how he does it, his name's Riley Greene. He's an outfielder for us.
Nice.
He's a young kid. He doesn't know how good he is still to this day. Wow. He's a big leaguer. But he truly, like, is just an unbelievable talent, and he'll play this game for a long time, because he truly just is like, I'm going to go up there, see ball, hit ball. Like, I've had to change my swing over the years because I needed to, and I can't just see ball, hit ball anymore.
Yeah.
But he truly at the highest level is just like, throw it in here, I'll hit it. And he does. And he can track him down in the outfield. He's truly like that. And it's not saying that he's not competitive. That's not,
Yeah.
I'm not saying like he doesn't care at all about, if we win or lose or whatever. I mean, you still care about competitiveness. You still want that drive to win. You want to win every day, but it's just this kind of, here I am and I'm going to hit it, and he does it.
Wow.
But that's the one guy that kind of comes to mind right now.
Riley Greene. Jake, just a couple more questions for you, man, and we'll finish up. But I would be just kind of along those lines, and I know it's fun for just baseball fans. I'm a baseball fan, and we all want anybody who's ever played the game with the passion that you have for it, that I have for it. The goal is to get to the big leagues, and very few people do that. So, what's it like being a big leaguer?
It's incredible. It's so much fun, man. It's so much fun. It's everything they ever talked about. It's so much fun. I mean, I truly enjoy the game. I love competing. I'm a little kid, man. I love baseball cards. I love collecting memorabilia. I try to get everybody's autograph that I can. Even if they've meant something to me along the way, whether it's a Cape Cod roommate or I truly love the game, and I think that's kind of what helped me become and get to the highest level. Is I truly did love it, because there was some guys along the way that they were really good at it, but really just didn't like the game. They were just good at it, and they viewed it as a job. And
interesting.
And they and even my brother, like, he would come watch me play and hang out with us. And one guy would be like, and it's like, this guy's incredible. He got so much power, and then he just doesn't really like the game. And sure enough, a year later, he's not in the game anymore. So it's so much fun, man. You can't really describe it, but it really is a dream come true. I've been through all the levels in the minor leagues, and a story my dad loves to tell is like, we were busing from, I was in AA, we were busing from Erie, Pennsylvania to Portland, Maine. And it's like a 16-hour bus ride. Ugh. And we were busing through the day, through the night, into the next day, into an off day. And I was sitting by like on the buses, they have the emergency exit windows, like where they kind of can pop out and you can push out and get out. Well, the window was broke. And so for 16 hours, I was laying up against the window trying to sleep, and it's doing this, the whole time. And I lasted until we played a game at 7, ended at 11, and got out of there, at midnight. About 3 hours later, we're down the road, and I'm like, man, I can't sleep. And I'm just, everyone else is passed out, and I'm just sitting there, wide awake. And I called my dad, and I knew he was asleep, but I woke him up, and I'm like, dude, you got to talk to me. I'm so bored right now. And he's, pissed at the moment. He's like, well, what's going on? And I'm like, well, window's broke, and I'm not gonna be able to sleep for another 13 hours. I got 13 more hours to go on this bus ride.
Oh, yuck.
And he's, laughing, like, sucks for you. I'm in a nice bed about to sleep. But I talked to him for a little bit and then hung up. And a couple years later, I called him and told him that I made the big leagues, and I'm flying on the way to Anaheim. And, he was super happy, but
what was that like, Jake? What was that like?
The debut, or like getting the call?
What was it like knowing that you got called up, and what was that conversation like between you and your dad, and telling the people that you love? Yeah,
so it kind of got my call up kind of got ruined because of Twitter. So it broke on Twitter during my AAA baseball game that day. And the manager had to, so normally what they do is they kind of wait, and you've probably seen videos online, and people have seen videos of people getting called up, but what they do is they kind of bring you into the office, and then they say, hey man, congratulations. And, they do some sort of congratulatory, big thing, or everyone finds out. But he had to come up to me in the middle of the dugout, and he was like, hey man, come here, and took me into the tunnel and was like, hey, you've probably heard from fans and stuff, but yeah, you're going to go to the big leagues tomorrow. You're going to play the Angels. And I was speechless. And like, I just kind of stood there. And even though I kind of knew it was going to happen, when he told it to me, I just like got emotional. And he was like, dude, you're good. Go to the clubhouse, call who you want to call, take your time. We're not going to play you today. You're good. And I'm like, okay. So I go inside and I called my brother first and told him, and he was pumped. But then I called my mom and dad, and Ben, my oldest brother, was actually in the mountains in Colorado fly fishing, so I couldn't get a hold of him. So he didn't find out until like late that night into the next day.
And he's watching TV and he's like, my brother's on TV.
Yeah. So he didn't have any service, but no, it was awesome, man. It was very emotional, a lot of people crying and hard work, man. It was a lot of hard work. It was a long road and it all paid off, man. But it was, to tie in the story with my dad, I called him that day and he goes, man, just call me in the morning because I'll be up and going to work. And I had a 6 a.m. flight to LA or something. I can't remember. It was an early flight out of Detroit. And I called him and he didn't answer, called me back. And I was getting on the plane. And no matter when you're going to the big leagues or not from the big leagues, but if you're going to the big leagues or with the big league team and they have like a function or you're getting called up, you fly first class. And it's the first time I've ever flew first class in my life. And he calls me and I answer and I'm like, he's like, oh, sorry, I missed your call, blah, blah, blah. He's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm getting on the plane. He's like, oh, and I'm like, yeah, I'm getting in first class. He goes, a couple bad words here and there. And he was like, freaking 2 years ago today, you're calling me at 3 a.m., just complaining about a broken window on a bus. And here you are taking first class to Los Angeles, and
unbelievable.
But it was incredible. It was so much fun. I love that debut experience was incredible. Getting to play against like Pujols, which is a huge look up, and playing against Trout and Ohtani, Justin Upton. Just big names, that I've looked up to and watched my whole life. Obviously playing with Miggy and all, it was a pretty unreal experience. And honestly, I couldn't tell you a single thing that happened that day because everything was going so fast. I had so many interviews. And it was like, before I knew it, I was sitting in my hotel bed and I'm like, what just happened? Because they don't normally play you when you fly out. They normally, you'll fly out and they're like, all right, take the day. You're starting tomorrow, the day game or whatever it is. You're starting tomorrow against this guy, you're catching this guy, kind of get your things in order. And but I got into the park at like 11 a.m., which is super early. There's guys that kind of get there early, like I'm one of the earlier guys, and we'll get there at 12:31 for a 7 o'clock game. But 11:30 is pretty early. And a guy named Bobby Wilson, who's now the coach for he's the catching coach for the Rangers, was playing with me. He was in the big leagues at the time, ended up getting DFA'd, and he was like, as soon as you get called up, you better start doing homework, because at the time we were still not kind of analytical, but it was kind of flipping to everything being so numbers driven. But I went in and I sat down and I just did all the homework on all the hitters, like where to pitch them just in case I was going to play. And I did that for it took me 2 hours. And then about that time, the manager walked in and I went and shook his hand and said, hey, he's like, hey, Ron Gardenhire.
Gardenhire.
Gardy. Yeah. He was like, man, he was like, well, you want to play today? And I said, it's kind of what I'm here for. He goes, all right, you're playing. And I went, oh, all right. So I went and then I had to start studying. I just started studying all the hitters and stuff, and trying to just get in my head.
I want to know this. I want to know this.
Pitch Trout and freaking Albert Pujols has got 8,000 home runs.
Jeez, dude. I want to know this. When you were running out on that field for the first time, what was that like?
And it was awesome. It was awesome.
Were you floating? Were you nervous?
I am always nervous. I get nervous before every game. I get butterflies literally every game. Really? It takes me until about until probably after like the first 2 pitches or so, and then I kind of lose it and I settle in. But man, I was for sure nervous. I had a pretty good game. I had a pretty good game that game and the next game, but yeah, I was nervous, man. But it didn't matter because, like I said, like I had no like I don't remember like, and this is why everyone says like, oh, you know, what do you hear? You know, what did Miggy tell you when you came up, and you know, or what did this guy tell you when you debuted? You know, it's like, oh, just embrace it. You know, enjoy it because it only comes once. You know, and that's like, it's so true, but it's so hard to do because you're so caught up in emotions and you're going. Wow. Everyone wants to, you know, what happened in Toledo? How did they tell you? You know, what'd your family, you know, blah, blah, blah. And which is part of the story, you know, and they have to tell you, they want to know it in the media. And then you just have interview after interview, and then you go out and you hit BP, and then you come in and you have interview, and then get ready for the game. And, you know, you're walking out an hour before the game time and getting ready to catch. And you know, it was just so nonstop that I truly remember it, but I couldn't tell you what happened or what pitch I hit, or, I mean, it's kind of a weird deal, man. And it took a few days.
What was your stat line in your first game? What'd you do?
2 for 4. Who
was your first hit off in the big leagues? Who was it off
of? Griffin Canning. Canning.
Yeah, the dude from UCLA.
Griffin Canning. Yeah, he's still in the big leagues, still kicking. Yep. We have he's one of my favorite pitchers to hit off of in the big leagues. I got 3 homers off of him or something. Oh. Griffin, hey, I love you, but I appreciate it.
Well, Jake, let me say this, man. I got one quick question for you, and then I got to wrap this up. I got to let you go. What's the per diem in the big leagues these days?
Per diem? Oh man, not much. Like $30 a day.
That's it.
That's it. Yeah.
Man,
they took it away.
Because wasn't it
like took it away? So it used to be like $100 and something a day.
Okay.
But they took it away because in the union, in the CBA, one of the agreements they came on was that you no longer have to tip clubbies, which we still tip clubbies, but they made a thing that because clubbies used to only get paid on tips. Like that was like their only source of income, were these clubhouse managers, you know, that are doing everything for you, you know, washing your clothes and all that stuff. But they were only getting paid off tips. And what they did was they made the team pay them a salary, and then kind of tried to take away tips, but no right human's not going to tip a guy, you know, for washing your clothes. I mean, it's just part of the deal, you know. But yeah, they went down pretty quick. I think it's like, I want to say it's like $30 a day, 35.
Wow. Yeah. Well, you know what? Who cares? Because you guys get everything catered in anyway.
Yeah. Well, you get 2 meals no matter what.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, hey, Jake, man, I want to say this to you, and as we're wrapping up, number one, listeners, audience, guys, if you don't know who Jake Rogers is, you have got to start following this guy. Follow him on Twitter, follow him on Instagram, _JRog, JROG_. Is that right, Jake?
It's it.
Go follow him. And I'll say this, knowing him the way that I know him, he's the most gracious. This is one of the most gracious guys that you'll ever meet. If you're a parent right now, you want your kid watching this guy and the way he goes about his business, because this is how you do it. This is exactly how you treat people. Good human being, stud baseball player, excels at everything. So if you don't know who he is, follow him and have your kids watch him and make him. I know my boys are mandated. You're their favorite player, Jake, whether they want to or not. But Jake, I want to thank you so, man. And on behalf of like truly all the guys that, you know, our past coaches, those circles, so proud of you, dude.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. I appreciate you having me on. Appreciate you having me on. I really enjoyed it. I hope you get one piece or something that someone can take and use it to. I just hope they get something from it. But yeah, I got to brag on you too. You know, we didn't even get to the point where you told me not to take pitches off, and here I am in the big leagues. So that's a huge piece of advice that I appreciate. I got to brag on you a little bit too. But that was a huge piece of advice in the parking lot after a game. Was like, man, you're good, but you know, you take pitches off here and there, and you need to figure it out. And I actually, you know, I think helped me truly a lot because I was so talented with that position. And I think I took some pitches for granted, and I would take some pitches off because I thought I would catch them and I didn't. So that was one piece of advice that I took to heart, man. I appreciate it. But
hey, I am happy that I was able to help in some way, shape, or form. And you know what? I'll say this, Jake. This is what I want. You were so you handled constructive criticism so well. That was something advanced. In retrospect, you look back at that and you say he was unbothered, but he listened. And dude, nothing got by you. And it was like you're the best that I've ever been around. So Jake, I love you, man. We're so proud of you. And hey, go. Happy Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
Okay. Happy Valentine's Day. And I hope everything works well for you from now until spring training. Go have a great spring training. We're going to be following you in the upcoming season, man.
Awesome.
Best of luck to you. Okay.
I appreciate it, man. Love you too.
All right. See you, Jake.
Again, I want to thank Jake Rogers for taking some time to talk with us today. Go give him a follow on the gram and X at _JRog at _JROG_, and be sure to tune in and watch number 34 Behind the Dish on a TV this spring. I'm your host, Ross Hawley, and on behalf of Showcase in College Baseball, I want to thank you for listening. Be sure to follow the Showcase in College Baseball group page on Facebook or visit us at collegerecruitprep.com for more of our podcasts and content. We will see you next time.